Welcome to the first postseason edition of the Gridirion Address. We're talking some wild card, we're talking some NFL draft, and we can't forget about the primetime preview. Been doing this for a full season now. I still can't talk, but they're back again. They are regulars at this point. Chris, you've seen them all season. Jason, he's been on a lot to close out the season. I'm very much grateful for that. But Chris, Jason, how are y'all doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. The Steelers lost. That was not the best look, but we're going to go get into that. I have some takes. I had some time to process it, think about it. It's not unexpected, but we're going to, talk about it in the most adult way we can.
That is true because I didn't play the disclaimer. For future episodes, I probably will, Chris, so you can fully let loose. But
Jason, I did last night to
you. Jason, your Giants didn't make the playoffs. My Panthers didn't either. But, I mean, how are you doing? It's been a fun postseason. Games haven't been close, but I still like watching football, man.
I love watching football. It's been interesting. So some very, very interesting results so far. I was a little disappointed. The Broncos didn't show up really at all. I think they showed up the first quarter, and then other than that was it. And then, man, Houston, watch out. If they get hot, they look good, man. And that Houston defense was impressive. So let's go, man. Full on playoff football. Here we go.
Yeah, we're going to touch more on that Texans-Chargers game, but I loved the result. I was pulling for Houston. Love me some CJ Stroud. But like I said, we're going to kick off the show with the Bucs-Commanders preview. This is the game I was most excited for once we got the matchups finalized. Baker Mayfield has been playing super hot. I think he deserves some MVP shouts. He belongs in the conversation. The guy is playing phenomenal football with the injuries at receiver they've had to deal with. Evans was out for a chunk of the year, and they were still able to win granted a weak NFC South, but still it takes a lot. They didn't have control of the division. The Falcons played themselves out, but the Bucs were right behind them, winning games when they needed to. Jason, I'll throw this to you first. Bucs are favored by 3. How do you think this matchup is going to play out? Can Jaden Daniels continue and build on this amazing rookie campaign, which will likely end with him winning Offensive Rookie of the Year? Or does this experienced Bucs team prove to be too much for the younger Commanders to overcome?
When it comes to playoffs, experience counts. Look, what they've done in Washington is no less than amazing to turn that team around, turn that franchise around. Jaden Daniels has them clicking on all cylinders. They're about 2 years ahead of projections. So phenomenal season. I think anything up to this point has been icing on the cake, making the playoffs. But this is the playoffs. This is a different animal. Baker Mayfield knows that. Those Bucs know that. They got a lot of guys on that squad that have been in this position before. Daniels, I think this moment may be a little bigger than he expects it to be. But give me the Bucs. I think they win this thing. I think they win it by a touchdown, maybe a little bit more. Evans knows he doesn't have very many years left in him. That 1-2 punch of the Bucs running back there with Bucky, Irvin, and White is phenomenal. And you got to keep giving Baker his flowers, man. I tell you what a phenomenal year, losing both your top wide receivers and still being able to get your team to the playoffs. Yes, a little bit of a weak division. I'll give them that, but they still play phenomenal. They're up there in scoring. They're one of the top teams scoring in the NFL. So I think the Bucs are going to play really, really well. Commanders, they're a great team, great story with Daniels. I think this moment's going to be a little bit big for them. Plus, they're playing at home. So once those cannons start firing, I think it's going to be a little much for Daniels to handle.
Chris, same question to you. Can Jaden Daniels help lead the Commanders to a playoff upset over a pretty experienced Bucs team that is playing some good football as of late?
Well, I mean, my big point with it is that Jaden Daniels has been really spreading the field really well recently, not just with Terry McLaurin. He's been really spreading the field with Brown and even with Brian Robinson out of the backfield. And the Bucs' pass defense is actually the third worst when it comes to yards given up. And that's the thing, is I think that even if they're double teaming McLaurin, even if it's Winfield on McLaurin, I still can't see the Bucs being able to pull this out with that unsustainable pass defense that they've had this year. I really think that Baker Mayfield is going to light it up tonight. The Commanders secondary is obviously very suspect. I mean, even my roommate, who's a very big Commanders fan, that's the big thing he always hammers to me before I go on this program, guys, is every time he's like, talk about how bad our secondary is. Talk about how bad our secondary is. That's our biggest weakness in the draft. And he's right. He really is right there. And that's why I think Jaden Daniels is going to drag this Commanders team to a playoff win. And who knows, guys? They could even do a run. This Commanders team looked really good. They looked really good against a very good Atlanta team. They looked really good against Dallas. They looked really good against the Giants in both games. Not like this says much, just joking. But still, a really, really good Washington team and a very experienced Tampa team. Give me Jaden Daniels. Give me those Commanders.
Chris, I love the take. I'm going to agree with you. I think that Jaden Daniels is going to be able to do just enough to get them the one playoff win. I don't see it being more than that because as it stands right now, the Packers are going to lose to the Eagles, and that sends the Commanders to play Detroit, and that is a worst-case matchup. Even though that Lions defense is banged up, that's going to be too much for them to handle. The Lions offense is too hot. Like you said, incredibly suspect secondary. They're not going to be able to stop all the weapons that the Lions have. I do think the Commanders pull off the upset. I think Jaden Daniels drags them to a win. It'll be a good game, probably high scoring. Like you mentioned, Baker's probably going to light them up. I'm going Commanders by 6 points. Super fun game. And hopefully we won't run over too long. But our next segment, we're going to do something a little different, try and introduce some mock draft offseason content. So what we're going to do is I have a mock draft simulator pulled up, PFF, and we're going to go through that, just do a first round picks for Giants, Panthers, and Steelers. And, as the playoffs go on and there's less games to cover, we're going to start adding rounds and go a little more in depth on some of the picks. But just bear with me a little bit. My computer has been weird all day, so hopefully it won't mess up too bad. But all righty, we got the mock draft pulled up. Jason, your lines are going to be the first pick we're making. Sanders and Ward off. What are you feeling here?
Well, and that's going to be tough. I'm going definitely. I think we can get a quarterback in the later rounds. So you got to take the best available. I mean, you got to take Travis Hunter. I think he is a phenomenal player. It'd be interesting to see whoever chooses him, especially if the Giants can get him, how they tend to use him. Do they want to use him on the defense, or are they going to use him offensively? I don't see them doing both with him. Maybe on special occasions for certain packages, I can see them kind of trying to fit him in because, of course, the NFL game is a little bit different. But if we had to take somebody and both of those top quarterbacks are gone, you got to take the best available, and he is the best available.
Okay, my Panthers up on the clock. We got Abdul Carter is unfortunately off the board here. That is who I'd want them to take if he falls to 8. I think that kind of dynamic edge rusher is exactly what they need. But an incredibly close second for me is Mason Graham. Phenomenal against the run, and he can bring a little something to the pass rush, which they need help on for both of those. It really comes down to which one of those guys is available. And in the event that they're not, I would like to see a Malachi Starks or Will Johnson pick bolster that secondary that has been incredibly weak as well. Panthers defense needs help everywhere, but this situation, I'm going to go Mason Graham. Chris, Pittsburgh's up. They need a fair amount. Yes, they made the playoffs, but I mean, they struggled against Baltimore. We're going to hit on that coming up here shortly, but what are you going to go with here?
Is Josh Simmons off the board? I can't tell if he won or not. He's a tackle.
Looks really?
Like he might be off the board.
Yeah, looks like it. That was my second.
Yeah, he's off the board.
Yeah. That was my. That's kind of who I wanted them to go with due to his ability to block the screen, how mobile he is, and how light-footed he is for his size. This one's a hard one. This one's a really hard one. I really want us to go best overall offensive lineman. Those are my main two. I'll probably this one's hard. This one's so hard.
I would think you guys would go wide receiver. I mean,
I don't know.
That offense looks.
Isaiah Bond still on the board?
Let's take a
As a
look.
Bond, I'm just going to go Milam if Bond's gone.
I do believe.
Give me Milam then. Give me Milam out of West Virginia. I'll do my Morgantown bias. I actually got my WVU shirt on right now. Milam's still on the board. So
Bond is on the board.
Bond's on the board. Yeah, let's go Bond then. Let's go Bond. I mean, we need an electric wide receiver like him to complement George Pickens if he's still there. We'll see if he is still there. But even if that is a little bit of a reach, I wouldn't mind it. Milam or Bond, it was 50-50. We need tackles and we need wide receivers. And the big reason that I'm kind of angry about this draft is because the amount of edge rushers, and I was like, that's the one thing we don't need. That's the one thing we're okay with TJ Watt. But what are you going to do? The Steelers are in a weird one, and we're going to do more of this coverage in the offseason. But Bond, I think, is a good pick. Electric wide receiver to complement another electric wide receiver in George Pickens.
Now, what are your Steelers, Chris? What are your Steelers going to do at quarterback, man? What are you thinking? Because I think I texted you yesterday. It's like, when are they going to put Fields in? Right now, you got, Russ is a 1-year rental, and I don't see him really staying. Is Fields your future? Do you guys draft a quarterback? I mean, what are you thinking on that? Because, again, that offense looked atrocious yesterday.
Steelers aren't going to trade up. That's not a thing that the Steelers will do, even though I wouldn't necessarily mind it. I think that they're probably going to wait, Nick, to the later rounds. It wouldn't surprise me if they draft like a Dart or someone like him later on, but I don't think they're going to go quarterback in the first round. I think they're probably going to go with Justin Fields next year. More than likely, he looks sustainable in the first 3 weeks. So draft a quarterback to keep a fire under him, but maybe sign someone. They're not going to go with anyone like Sam Darnold or anything. Even though I wouldn't mind a Sam Darnold, but they're not going to do that. It's just not a thing the Steelers would do.
Chris, I just want to throw that out there. PFF thinks that Isaiah Bond at 22 is an F grade.
Nice.
So that's brutal. Like you said, a bit of a reach, but they do need receiver help. Pickens, talented receiver, but he's got behavioral issues.
Under Millen. I mean, that was 50-50. I don't really care. But again, there's a reason that we're not as high as you guys. No, I'm just messing. But
look, you're not wrong. You got a great head coach who's been there for a while. But Chris, moving on, we're talking that Steelers-Ravens game. Yes, it was only 14 points, but it felt like a significantly more – there was not that much competition in the game. It felt like Baltimore just had it from the jump. Pittsburgh late season collapse has become a classic as of late. You hate to see it. They always start well, fall apart late. Early exit in the postseason. What does Pittsburgh need to do to stop these late season collapses, whether it's coordinator changes, draft picks, free agent signings?
Learn from the mistakes. I mean, that's the big thing. My big issue is that we went for Arthur Smith, which I didn't agree with the offensive coordinator signing whatsoever, because he didn't work with weapons like Kyle Pitts and like Bijan Robinson and Drake London. And then you put him in a situation where he has pieces, but not as good pieces. And there was no learning. The Steelers system was learned very quick because it's run it up the middle twice and then screen pass or a deep pass. And it doesn't work. I mean, sometimes it did work, but not always. And especially when you get against respectable secondaries or even not so great secondaries we saw against Baltimore. Their secondaries really struggled. Put way too much pressure on the defense. And overall, my take on it is we need to learn from our mistakes. We need to do something different. If it didn't work the first 5 times, then it's not going to work the next 10 times. That's why we lost. I was hoping we would make it closer, but we didn't. I'm not shocked. I'm not really that upset. I kind of expected this to happen. I was mentally prepared for this already, and exactly what I thought happened. I honestly thought we were going to get shut out, if I'm being honest, by the half. But we had 1.5 good drives. So what are you going to do?
Jason, what do you think Pittsburgh needs to do to get over this hump? Because clearly Tomlin's a good coach, but they're just struggling to get over this late season come apart that they've been having.
They're missing something. There was no excitement. There was no joy. That was probably the most unexcited. I've never seen a Tomlin Steelers team so bored and lacking enthusiasm to play the game. I mean, you had a chance to smack these guys in the mouth and kind of make a little noise. Even if you get a 15-yard something, I expected to see some kind of energy, and there was no energy on that field from the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday, and I didn't see it from anybody. Russell is not the answer. The run game is so. You can only do so much when you're constantly behind. You're on third down and long. You're only going to do so much. But I was just very disappointed in what Pittsburgh came out and just had no kind of oomph, no kind of excitement. They had a chance to at least make some noise, and they didn't do anything. They just let the Ravens run all over them, and that's one thing that the Ravens, with Derrick Henry running that football, that's going to get them to the promised land. If they stop running with Lamar Jackson, only when they kind of absolutely need to. There was a couple of times where Lamar, was kind of slow getting up because I think he ran too much yesterday. But you saw when they handed the ball to Derrick Henry how much of a beast he really is. But the Steelers got pushed around. I mean, how many stiff arms did the Baltimore Ravens throw on that Steelers defense? I mean, even Isaiah Likely slammed some guys to the ground. So it was just very disappointing. There was no excitement. There was no enthusiasm. And that's rare from a Mike Tomlin team. They at least go out there with a little bit of oomph, and they had nothing. They just literally they just went through the motions and lost the game and walked off the field. So it was pretty disappointing.
Obviously not a great game, but we know what the Ravens' next matchup is going to be. They're going into Orchard Park and playing the Bills. I am super excited for this game. It's going to be phenomenal. Bills started a little slow against the Broncos today. We're going to touch on that from the Broncos perspective here in a bit. But since we're here with the Ravens-Bills matchup, Jason, how do you see this playing out? Presumably Buffalo is going to be favored. I haven't seen if any lines have opened yet, but you think Baltimore can pull off like an upset? I don't really think it should be because they whooped Buffalo earlier this season. And I think if Buffalo cannot start hot, Baltimore is going to end up beating them because they're just a better offense than the Broncos have. They're not going to only be putting up 7 points on their first drive and then get shut out the rest of the game. They have too much going on for them. Zay Flowers, I don't know if he's going to be active for that game, but Jason, slow start for Buffalo. They got Baltimore at home next week. How's it going to go down?
This is essentially the battle for the MVP. I think a lot of MVP voters right now are just waiting to see who's going to play and who's going to win this game. Right now, to me, this game is going to be a tale of two running backs. Cook on one side, Henry on the other side. I think this is whoever can run the football effectively, control the clock, control the line of scrimmage is going to win this game. And that's the only way you're going to beat the other guy because Lamar Jackson is electric. Josh Allen is electric. They both can run. They both can throw the ball. They both have weapons. How do you stop that? Well, those defenses are pretty good, but they're not great. And that's why Buffalo started off a little slow because at least Denver's defense, the first quarter and a half, 2 quarters was really, really good. But control the clock and keep the ball out of their hands. If you keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands, he can't do any damage. So run the ball, grind the clock out. The Buffalo Bills had some drives that were 5+ minutes in this game. So I think that's what they're going to try to do is they're going to run the ball with Cook, do a little bit of play action, maybe move Allen a little bit too, try to get him running out of the pocket and get some first downs and just kind of grind the clock out and hopefully keep the ball out of Lamar's hand. But this is going to be an electric football game. You have 2 guys on the top of the heap playing at an unbelievable level. This is going to be a lot of fun to watch, and hopefully it's a great game. Not sure what the weather's going to be yet because that's going to be kind of the X factor there in Buffalo. Hopefully there's not like a snowstorm or anything because I think that would hamper a lot of things. But Derrick Henry and Cook are going to be keys to this football game.
For sure. Chris, how do you see this playing up? Your divisional rival, Baltimore Ravens, just beat your favorite team. Are you going to pick them against Buffalo, or is Buffalo going to have home field advantage and move on to the AFC Championship with a possible rematch against the Chiefs?
It's going to be close, man. It's going to be really, really close. And I am going to go Baltimore. I think they get the upset because of their system. The Ravens outplayed a really good defense in the Steelers twice this year. They've outplayed a lot of really good defenses. And overall, this game is two quarterbacks with a chip on their shoulder. Like Jason said, this is the story of the MVPs, and there's a lot to prove. I mean, this will basically determine the MVP. The Ravens had a really good rush defense, and the Bills did not. That's something. The Bills are toward the middle when it comes to rush defense, and I think they're going to struggle to stop Henry. I mean, they really bottled up Javonte Williams. That's not saying all that much. I think he's kind of suspect, but I think they're really going to struggle to stop Derrick Henry. And this is going to be close. I really, really wish that this wasn't happening in the divisional round. One, because I really want to see Kansas City lose, and two, I would rather this be the AFC Championship, just because of how competitive it is. But overall, give me Baltimore. I think that quarterback rush, running back rush, Derrick Henry is going to run all over them. And I think it's going to be a shootout with some good takeaways. I think Lamar, he might mess up here. I mean, he's not done it much either this year at all. Most of his interceptions really weren't his fault. But give me Baltimore in a close game if Baltimore keeps the strategy that they've been rolling with.
And I never gave my pick. I'm going to go Bills. Sorry about that. I didn't give my pick. I think it is going to be close, like you're saying, Chris. But nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. They're playing at home. Josh Allen needs this. I know Lamar does too, but Josh Allen's playing really, really well. So give me the Buffalo Bills.
50-50.
I agree with you, Chris. Super close. I don't think Buffalo's losing again, though. I think they're going to take that rough loss they had to Baltimore this season, and they're going to come out swinging. I don't think they're going to have a slow start. I think Josh Allen is going to prove why he should win the MVP. MVP, that's a whole nother conversation. We're going to touch on it some point in a future episode, but Bills come out hot. I don't think they're going to have the same slow start we saw against the Broncos, because that Broncos defense, one of the best in the league. Baltimore has a stout defense as well, but it's not the same unit that the Broncos have. I'm going Bills, super close game. I don't know about a final score. That's a tricky thing to pick. I don't know. I'm not going to give one. Yeah. It's my show. I can decide what I have to give or not, but I'm going Bills. It's going to be a great game. But moving on, Texans Chargers, like we said earlier, I was shocked. I did not expect this from this game. I thought the Texans were going to blow it, but their defense looked great. Herbert, 4 interceptions. That's more than he had all season. Just insane stuff from that Texans defense. Chris, I'm going to say it again, former Texans fan, and Chris Deluca. Chris, what were your thoughts on this game? How surprised were you with the result, and how do you think that Houston matches up with Kansas City?
They played really well. I mean, it was a coin flip. Like I said before, Justin Herbert did not play well at all. He looked really, really bad. This was a big prove-it game for him. And the Texans had a chip on their shoulder. I mean, everybody counted them out. Everybody thought they were going to be one and done against a really, really good Chargers defense. And, like Jason always likes to say, Lad the Impaler, he always, Justin Herbert always manages to find him. The rush is normally pretty good too, but it just didn't happen. Just nothing was working. They were just lethargic. And the Texans defense, which is not historically very good, especially their secondary, really did very well against a quarterback that I've always, you guys know how much of a Justin Herbert defender I've been since he got drafted, especially Aaron. Unfortunately, that was not a good look for him. Is he bad? No. But overall, if the Texans can maintain this pace and do what they did against a very good Chargers defense, they could most definitely walk into Arrowhead and win it. Are they going to? Absolutely not, because there's some voodoo. There's some weird voodoo, and CJ Stroud is going to go back to his midseason form that he's been in a sophomore slump and throw like 2 or 3 interceptions. Something ridiculous will happen, and then Kansas City will win. Again, I would have much rather seen Buffalo or Baltimore have to play Kansas City and, have that consecutive really hard AFC matchup. But I think Kansas City will win, maybe not necessarily comfortably. I think Houston will put up a little bit of a fight, but like I said, there's some kind of black magic going on in there. I don't know what they got, but they got something going on, in the basements of Arrowhead Stadium, but we'll see.
Jason, how surprised were you with this matchup, and how do you think Houston's going to do going into Arrowhead next week?
I was not surprised. I called it on Out of Pocket on Friday with the Prez. I said Houston was going to win this game. I think Justin Herbert is very overrated, and it showed in that game. The Chargers were very one-dimensional. Yes, they have a great defense, but they could not get the run game going. You got one wide receiver. Quentin Johnson can't catch a cold. He is horrible. So when you have one wide receiver and not a lot of other weapons around you, you're not going to do much. CJ Stroud had his run game going. Joe Mixon looked like Joe Mixon, which is phenomenal. They had a great offensive line. That offensive line was pushing the Chargers out of the way. They wanted to win this game. Stingley on the defense, man, for Houston was a monster in that game. He was disruptive on both sides from out of bounds, man. He was just all over the place. And Nico Collins, if he's not in the top 5 wide receivers in the NFL, then nobody's watching football, because he is an absolute monster. He had a phenomenal game. So I love Houston. They look great. Going into Arrowhead is going to be a tall task, because the Chiefs are good. Their defense is good. Their offense has not been the best this year, but it depends on if they can get past the lure. You know, if you can get, we're playing Patrick Mahomes, and then everybody starts freaking out and they lose, because it's just, you know, you say his name 3 times like Beetlejuice. You say his name 3 times, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose and Patrick Mahomes goes crazy. So Houston has a puncher's chance if they play like they did against the Chargers. If they run the football, control the line of scrimmage, keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, and get that defense putting pressure on Mahomes and knocking the ball down. It's going to be a tall task. I think the Chiefs still pull it out, but I think it's going to be pretty close. And I would not be surprised to see Houston upset the Chiefs. But until you beat the man, you know, they are still the champs. So I think the NFL has a script written that they want them in there for their 3rd Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a clean sweep for this pick. Yes, Houston has a puncher's chance, but it's just not going to be enough. The Chiefs are a phenomenal football team. They're winning these close games. They're constantly finding ways to win. I cannot, in good faith, pick against them this early. Maybe AFC Championship I can pick against them. Got to see how Buffalo and Baltimore look in that matchup, but clean sweep for me. I think the Chiefs get it done pretty easily. Houston will probably hang around early on, but I expect Kansas City to expand that lead in the second half and make it not a super competitive game, which I hate to say. I would love to see this upset. I'm rooting for it heavily. But moving on, Bills Broncos. We talked about this game from the Bills side, but we're going to talk about it from the Broncos perspective. They absolutely exceeded expectations this season. I don't think anybody expected them to be in the playoffs with Bo Nix in year 1. Their defense looked phenomenal, led the league in sacks, just a really phenomenal performance from that team. Yes, they lost round 1, didn't look great, but they're ahead of schedule. Chris, what can the Broncos take from this season that will help them build on it from for next season?
I mean, I first just want to say shout out Denver. I mean, you know, they have the most dead cap, which is surprising considering, you know, Cleveland exists, but they have the most dead cap, and Sean Payton still managed to drag that team that I think started 2-5, 2-6, something like that, into the playoffs in a very, very hard division with 2 other teams that are really, really punching very well right now, especially Kansas City, the aforementioned Chiefs. So shout out to the Broncos. What do I think they need to do? Well, rushing attack. We already talked about Javonte Williams. I don't think he is the answer. I think that they need to go for a running back. Who? I think that that's going to kind of determine based on who's fallen that low. This isn't a hugely running back heavy draft class, at least, but we can see they need a better rushing attack. I think the defense is where they want it to be. They could maybe draft another wide receiver to complement Courtland Sutton, who had another very good year. Courtland Sutton, by the way, is just one of the most consistent receivers. I mean, I wouldn't say he's like Mike Evans level, but he has been consistent. You know, Jason is speaking of being a big fantasy guy. Marvin Mims as well had a good year. a lot of good names in that Broncos receiving core, but I think they should add a receiver, add a running back, and just protect Bo Nix, develop him slowly. And who knows, maybe they could fight for that division one day, in the longer to mid future.
Jason, how would you like to see the Broncos build on this season for next year?
Bo Nix is a beast. I think he is, again, the second coming of Josh Allen, just big kid. He can run, he can throw, but he needs protection. It showed it today. That offensive line failed him. That offensive line failed that running game. Look, I know Williams and some of their other running backs are not the best, but they're serviceable. That offensive line just could not control the line of scrimmage. They were getting pushed around. The Buffalo Bills were putting tons of pressure on Bo Nix. So they saw the blueprint on how to beat him because he's still young. He's still learning. So push people out of the way and put pressure on him. And they put pressure on him, and that showed. So Denver moving forward, I think they can get some pieces, but right now, get that offensive line. You have a great defense already. You have great wide receivers. You have Bo Nix, who is going to turn out to be an absolute stud in this league. But offensive line, it doesn't matter who you put in the backfield. If you're not blocking, it doesn't matter. They're going to get tackled. So I'd like to see Broncos shore up that O-line.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you, Jason. I think there's going to be some solid offensive line talent right around where Denver's going to be picking. That would definitely be the right move. Rounds 2, 3, like Chris said, look at a wide receiver, look at a running back, maybe a Martin Hampton from UNC falls into the second round. I think he probably will. I don't know if we're seeing more than one running back go in the first. That's obviously Ashton Genty. Potential top 10 pick. I don't know, because the value of running back it's not great. It's arguably at an all-time low. It's picking up a little bit, but we're seeing more running back by committee, so teams are going to prioritize that. But, I mean, just shout out Denver for having a great season. I absolutely despise Sean Payton with every ounce of my soul, but he's a really good head coach. Should he have ever been a head coach after Bountygate? That's a conversation for the offseason. We'll definitely touch on that at some point, but we're going to talk about Eagles-Packers last wildcard game of the day. The Packers wide receiver core just banged up beyond belief. Watson goes down. Dobbs goes down. Just absolutely brutal for Green Bay. Defense super stout, but wide receivers dealing with drops all year. I think they led the league in drops. Just horrific performance from that unit. But going into the offseason, Chris, what do you think Green Bay needs to address? Do they target a wide receiver early in the draft, or do they try and solve that issue through free agency?
The key is they should target a wide receiver in the draft. Are they going to? Absolutely not. They've never have. We remember this from years past when Aaron Rodgers was still there. All Rodgers wanted was a wide receiver, and they would be waiting until the 5th, 6th round to draft one. So they're still not going to. They're going to maintain the exact same strategy. I think they're going to do a very, very – I'm not even going to give a name. They're going to do a simple Packers pick and pick an edge rusher, pick a corner safety, something like that in the first round. I'm not even going to say a name because we all know it's going to happen. They're not going to draft a McMillan or a Bond or anyone. They're not going to trade up. They're going to leave it, and they're going to probably have the same, unfortunately for them, the same success, especially because the two teams in front of them are fantastic. They looked great this year. The Vikings and the Lions are only on the up and up, and hey, the Bears are a head coach and a decent offensive line away and from being around the Packers level of talent. I mean, if I'm being honest, they're pretty close. They're only a bloop in the blast away. So, yes, I think they should draft a wide receiver. Are they going to? No, they're not going to change their strategy.
Jason, what's Green Bay going to do about this wide receiver core that they're banged up, but drops plagued them all season? Free agency, draft, what's the move for them?
That's a good question. I mean, Jordan Love is a good quarterback. They hit the home run on him. They did really well. And running back wise, they're good. Jones is excuse me, I'm thinking of somebody else. The running back's good, but yeah, they need help. They need help on the offensive line. Their wide receivers, talking about Reed. Reed, that was just phenomenal last year, just took a nosedive this year, man. His value has completely tanked. Christian Watson's always hurt. Dobbs, he has potential to be a number one, but just tends to fall short. Devontae Wicks, he's up there, but, just didn't provide anything. Tucker Kraft was about the only guy for the Packers that really was consistent. So are they going to pick somebody top? No, they probably won't. They'll do Packers things. They'll pick an O lineman. They'll pick a defensive lineman. They'll do something like that. And then they'll try possibly in free agency. They may draft somebody, higher up, fifth, sixth round, just like Chris said. But I don't know. The Packers kind of do Packers things, and they do it the same thing every year. Maybe this year they'll wake up. Maybe they'll trade. Maybe they'll start dumping some guys, get rid of some of those wide receivers that aren't producing and free up some of that cap space and go out there and try to get some, because you got to realize you're going to have a Devontae Adams that's going to be out there floating around. It'd be nice to see him back in Green Bay. You put him with Jordan Love, then you probably have something going on. So you're going to have some wide receivers in the free agent market that I think that can make some noise if Green Bay decides they want to do some different things.
For sure. They're right there, but Chris, like you said, the Chicago Bears are an offensive line away from competing with them. I think the Bears are going to be smart and address that, and that NFC North is going to be super competitive. They already had 3 teams in the playoffs this year, and it looked like it could have been 4. Chicago had something early in the season. Then, what was it, 10, 11 game losing streak, absolute come apart. Brutal stuff from Chicago to close out the season, but Philly played a good game going up against a really stout Packers defense. How do you feel about the Eagles going into the divisional round? We don't know who they're going to be facing yet because that was the first NFC wildcard game that's happened. Jason, I'll throw that to you first.
It depends. If Philly runs the football, you have Saquon Barkley back there, run the football, keep Jalen Hurts on the field, make sure he doesn't get hurt, run the football, and then again, you got 2 dynamic wide receivers out there with A.J. Brown and Smith. So, I mean, the Eagles can make some noise. I think they're really kind of, I'm going to say, favored besides the Lions. I think they're probably one of the only other teams that I think could give the Lions a run for their money. But this Eagles team has been known to lay an egg. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Yes, they played a banged-up Packers team and won. So, I mean, you're only going to get so much love out of that. You need to go beat some formidable teams, and it's going to be interesting to see who they get to play here. But they have the formula as long as they follow the formula. Run the ball, Saquon Barkley. Get your dynamic wide receivers involved. Get your tight end involved. Let's get your playmakers going here. So let's see what happens. But I think that Eagles defense is going to be the sign of if they can move forward, because yes, they stopped the banged up Packers team. Can they stop a team that's rolling? So we're going to see who, because out of the teams left, there's a couple of teams that I think can steamroll the Eagles if that defense doesn't show up.
For sure. I'm super interested to see how this plays up. Obviously, tomorrow night we got Rams-Vikings playing at the Cardinal Stadium because of the wildfires that are going on in LA. Just tragic stuff. I just hope that they can end up being all right. Just absolutely terrible situation going on in LA. If anyone's able to support, there's plenty of resources out there. I don't have any on hand, but keep an eye out for that in the future. I'll link some in the description and future episodes for sure, because they need as much help as we can possibly give. But and on a little bit of a sad note, but that'll do it for the first postseason episode of the Gridiron Address. Real quick, want to shout out Drew Code Sports Talk. They just released their NFC wildcard predictions 10 minutes ago on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast. Be sure to go check them out. Cody, one of their co-hosts, he's been on Out of Pocket. He's a friend of the channel. Be sure to go show them some support as well. But that'll do it for us. It's been your 3 co-hosts, pretty much, Aaron, Chris, and Jason. Hope everyone has a good rest of their night, and let's go watch a great football game.